Hello and welcome to the virtual roundtable highlighting activities of the Joint Task Force on managing the impacts of digitalization on the DOT workforces, also known as the JTF-DIG for short. The JTF-DIG is a joint task force of the 5 committees in attendance here today: Agency Administration and the committees under it, Human Resources, Civil Rights, and Knowledge Management, and the Committee on Data Management and Analytics. Each committee has supplied talent and support for this joint effort, and the task force is just coming up to 20 months in its 2-year effort. Today, the task force will show the products and efforts that have so far been born of this endeavor.
Amanda, is this a picture of Alaska? Is that what I'm looking at on the screen?
Yes, this is actually the view out of my apartment window down the channel, and what you see below you is part of downtown Juneau.
Yes, I recognize it. I recognize it very well. Okay, so let me give a brief introduction. Would that be okay, Amanda?
Great. That sounds great.
Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. For some of you, I might be afternoon already, but I think it's morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Bill Panos, and I'm the director of the North Dakota Department of Transportation. And I was asked to give a brief introduction. So before I do that, let me extend my gratitude to everyone that organized today's virtual meeting, especially to my friend Amanda here, Amanda Holland, Clarice Coble, and Lloyd Brown for their assistance in getting at least me ready, and all the teams that got everything ready, all the panelists participating today. Thank you so much for participating. And I think Amanda was just talking about it, as you know, that the Joint Task Force was formed by the AASHTO Strategic Management Committee in 2018, and is being led by the Agency Administration Managing Committee. Other participants, of course, include committees on civil rights, data management and analytics, human resources and knowledge management, all sort of near and dear to my heart, and really important parts of what we do as DOTs around the country. The mission statement of the task force is to support DOTs in addressing the impacts of digitalization on their workforces by raising awareness and developing cross-cutting solutions, practices, and tools, and in the areas of culture and talent management and information and data management. You know, I think a lot about technology in our own organization and for all of the DOT functions around the country. You know, it'll surprise probably none of you that when I say that technology has had an incalculable contribution to the advancement of the human condition over the last 2 decades. It's been a remarkable journey for all of us. And perhaps the most impactful of all is the sharing of knowledge by placing it at the fingertips of anyone with a smartphone or a laptop. But today we are on the cusp of a new advancement, one that will change our personal and professional lives. It's pretty significant today because apart from computing power, there have been several developments that set the stage for this new age in our workplace. Precision location technology, miniaturization of sensors, and most importantly, algorithms have now all developed enough to make possible the creation of advanced systems in our workplaces and daily lives that will change them incalculably. Today, this important and virtual conversation is about digitalization and the impact on the workforce. And I look forward to hearing from some of our knowledge leaders and others about this important topic. You know, this is my first meeting with this group, and I want to thank you all for allowing me. I'm hugely grateful to all of you for allowing me the opportunity to participate with you. This is an important conversation that we have almost every day in our organization and in many organizations around the country. So thank you for participating in it. Thank you again to everybody, the entire team that put this together from all over the country. You guys are remarkable. And there's so much more to say than we're going to be able to say today in this meeting. But I look forward to this conversation, and obviously I look forward to all the future conversations about this important topic. So Amanda, I don't know if I did a good job, but there you go, and I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Bill. I thought you did a great job. Appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to come and introduce the task force and share what's really, I think, on the minds of a lot of us right now in the Departments of Transportation. Before we move into further into this meeting, I would like to just do a little bit of housekeeping. Given the large number of attendees, I want to let you know that participant audio and video is disabled. If you have any questions throughout today's presentation, please send in that information or questions using your chat feature. And then we also have a question box, and you can use that question box so we can read those questions out loud during the question and answer session here in this presentation. Today's session is being recorded, and it will be made available to AASHTO members. Thank you very much for taking time to join us today. As Bill mentioned, our goal is to share what we have to date and gather your feedback and insights on what you find useful and where we might go next as a joint task force. So there are 3 categories that may resonate with you in terms of the workforce: talent management, data and information management, and culture. What we'd like to do is recognize that the DOTs have spent the last year adjusting to the changes necessitated by the COVID pandemic. See here on the slide, here are some of the workforce challenges we've been facing: limited supply, increased demand, and changing needs. Even as our workforces have experienced greater turnover and higher retirements, we're also seeing a lot of our employees needing to be upskilled and learn new ways of doing work. Most of them are connected to new or changing technology. We also want to admit the unique challenges that we've all encountered due to the pandemic. For many of us, our daily tasks have really changed. Routines are very different as we perhaps have more remote work, or we have colleagues with remote work, or we're relying more on an online connection. The concept and definitions of digitalization is fluid, and the task force's working definition centers around the systemic, organizational, and business process and approach that's employed by a DOT for technology-induced changes. A more detailed definition is available on the Joint Task Force website, and we encourage you to visit that site after the presentations. Working with the National Cooperative Highway Research Program, the Joint Task Force identified the top 6 transportation-related workforce and technology megatrends that DOTs can take into consideration when preparing their workforces. The megatrends exist within 3 categories: culture, talent management, and data and information management. And the JTF DIG established 3 teams based on these categories. Let's hear first from the data and information management team.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lenny Oman. I am the knowledge strategist at the Washington State Department of Transportation and a member of the Committee on Knowledge Management. Our working group on data and information management conducted a survey starting in January of 2020 in order to establish a baseline about the current state of digitalization in our departments. We received 94 responses from 41 states, and you'll see that the results are available on the through the link here on the slide. So I encourage you to take a look at it because we're only going to be able to cover some brief highlights today. Within our survey, we identified 4 themes: organization and culture, approach to software, major systems, and information about the agencies. On organization and culture, our initial findings are that IT is varied in how it's organized across our states. 20 states report a hybrid system, whereas 8 states say that their IT is centralized across their state agencies, and 12 of the DOTs manage their IT systems directly themselves. Digitalization position, functions, and titling vary significantly across our states, and most don't use data business plans or data management plans. Some recommendations from our working group are to post position descriptions in the AASHTO Agency Capability Building portal, and to catalog digitalization functions and competencies for our agencies. We did ask some questions about the benefits and challenges of digitalization, and some of the key benefits that were identified are improving engagement with our customers and our partners in our organizations, cost savings, efficiencies, improved data integration capabilities, modernization of practice, and improved analysis and performance management. Some of the challenges that were identified are upgrading our legacy systems, developing governance across our organization, cultural resistance to change, and lack of focus, prioritization, and understanding of digitalization needs. Some recommendations that our committee has is to develop briefing documents on disruptions and benefits of digitalization and targeting activities to help our community understand these issues. Some of the workforce issues that were surfaced in the survey include new skills are needed, no surprise there. Increased upskilling needs for our current workers. Automation is reducing some of our workforce needs in some areas. And then there is increased third-party service usage across our states. We've identified recruiting challenges. There's difficulty attracting candidates. Salary levels are not competitive. Personnel processes that we have are constraining, and our classifications are outdated. For retention, we found that expectations for flexibility, access, and modern tools are increasing with the new workforce. Recommendations that we have: develop a course of digitalization related to certifications and training resources, and develop targeted activities for the top findings that we had. Tarun, I'll turn it over to you for the remainder.
Thank you, Lenny. So my name is Tarun Malhotra. I lead the data team at Michigan Department of Transportation, and I am part of this joint task force and also on the Committee for Data Management and Analytics. So on this slide, it's an interesting slide. Out of the 41 respondents, you'll notice the green numbers tell you the folks that responded with a yes, and the red with a no. So you'll see, as far as governance goes, you have slightly more adoption on the IT governance boards than data governance. Enterprise architecture is a big focus. You see 27 yeses and 11 nos. When you go to middleware, though, you'll see that there's only 5, not sure why it's showing 1 and 4, but 5 people, five DOTs responding with a yes and 20 responding no, which may indicate that there's more work to be done as far as moving away from point-to-point connections for applications and data. As far as separate funding for system maintenance, modifications, and new development, 23 agencies responded with a yes, they have separate funding for that, and 15 said no. So on this particular topic of data governance and enterprise architecture, we're recommending, as part of Joint Task Force, that we prepare briefing documents and case studies on these elements that we've demonstrated here. So when it comes to the approach to software, state DOTs have quite a similar approach to that. And the application system portfolio, the integration of applications, the execution methodology, and even the funding showed similar themes from state DOT to state DOT. And we're just trying to represent that in a pictorial format on this slide. Mainframe systems are aggressively being retired in favor of modern applications. COTS SaaS applications are providing alternatives to custom development projects across a broad swath of DOTs. 14 DOTs said that more than 20% of their major IT systems will use COTS, which is consignment off the shelf, for their software implementations. So that's 14 DOTs out of the 41 that responded. Again, coming back to integration, the point-to-point application integration is gradually being replaced by modern middleware, as we showed on the previous slide, but more work remains to be done there. Agile Scrum project development is also increasing through traditional, though the traditional waterfall approach, of course, continues to be used. Many of you may have those similar trends in your organization. The recommendations that we're proposing through the Joint Task Force are to prepare briefing documents and case studies on these elements. So you'll notice on this, if you look on the bottom and the right of this pie chart, that more than 3/4 of respondents to this survey are either planning to use AI and machine learning or have already used it. This survey was taken about a year ago, actually just pre-pandemic. I suspect that the numbers would be even higher today. So the small number that you show not planning might be a combination of when the survey was taken plus some people not necessarily looking across their organization to see if some of this was already happening. With that said, there's several systems. When you talk about major systems, which is one of our themes in the survey, several systems are widely used across agencies, DOT agencies, including asset management, records management, Esri, GIS tools, which are extremely important for any organization that is asset intensive, infrastructure intensive. Data analytics, we have Power BI and Tableau use increasing quite significantly. And as is shown in this pie chart, just to reiterate, there is strong interest in leveraging data analytics, AI, and machine learning. So to summarize and wrap up from my side, we're recommending as part of the joint task force that we prepare briefing documents on the major systems and get feedback from the states that are using them. That's all from my side. I'll turn it back over to Amanda.
Thank you very much, Lenny and Tarun. Appreciate all of the hard work that you've done and for sharing this information. Just a reminder, if you have questions, please submit them through the Q&A feature on the presentation. And we're going to move now to the talent management team.
Hi, everyone. I am Karen Van Dyke, and I am the HR Director for the Minnesota Department of Transportation, also as the Masco Regional Rep for the AASHTO HR Committee. My partners in the task force's work include Joanna McFadden from the Arkansas DOT and Brenda Williams from the Idaho DOT. In marketing these 3 webinars, we initially were referring to them as podcasts. So when we started the work, the deliverable was a series of podcasts on topics related to future workforce issues. Much of that research focused on teleworking, flexible work arrangements, and technology. Well, as you all know, when COVID hit, that's the phrase of the year, when COVID hit, our work was reassessed given that everyone, for the most part, really switched to rapid teleworking without much planning. So our group agreed that a virtual platform would be more appropriate, and we converted those to webinars and provided some great discussion on the impacts of digitalization in 3 areas: recruitment, telecommuting, and the new employee experience. So the recruitment webinar was held in September, and our panelist members included David Nichols, Training and Development Manager from Idaho DOT, Tani Thiem, recruiter from Idaho DOT, Cherie Hall-Kreuter, Affirmative Action Program Director from Tennessee DOT, and Crystal Jones, Talent Acquisition Management from Washington DOT. So the panelists really presented a diverse range of specialties, and there also seemed to be a little bit of an overlap between the 3 areas. But in this webinar, between the panelists and the participants, there really was a pretty robust discussion. Some highlights include innovative strategies for interviewing and selection, how to virtually engage applicants. And it was interesting, most DOTs, now this was in September, but most of the DOTs at that time were seeing an uptick in applicants, probably due to job security and the DOTs being a fairly stable job. Virtual platforms, how DOTs are using them, and lessons learned from platforms, technology, and virtual job fairs, and the importance of building partnerships for recruitment purposes. So David from Idaho at the end says, recruitment is life-changing work when you know that you connect someone to a profession that they didn't necessarily think of. And he really challenges all of us at DOTs to serve as recruiters and an ambassador for your DOT. So the webinar is housed on the Joint Task Force website for viewing. Thank you for your time today, and I will turn it over to Brenda Williams, who will highlight the telecommuting webinar. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. I'm Brenda Williams from the Idaho DOT. When we started the work on this task force almost 2 years ago, telecommuting was a futuristic thought. We anticipated this would be a subject we would be discussing a few years away. At the time, the team discussed what DOTs would need to do to attract and retain talent in the future. We talked about things like flexible schedules. What would that look like? Being able to offer flexibility to an employee by allowing them to attend a child or son or daughter's or a child's event during the day and make up those hours outside of core business hours. Where would employees do their work? Work from home, working at a coffee shop, or other non-traditional workspaces? How would managers measure productivity and outcomes? We knew DOTs would need to think differently about how, when, and where the work gets done. When COVID-19 arrived in mid-March, it changed everything. We were forced to change and think differently. We held a panel discussion in September with Maribel from Kansas, Brian from Georgia, and Tina from Arizona. We discussed what DOTs were doing to address the situation and keep employees safe. Here are some of the things we talked about and learned from that panel discussion. Before the pandemic, very few employees in the DOTs were working from home. People were granted leave more on a medical basis than anything. I would say 1% to 2% of employees were working from home, very low percentage. People took their COOP plans and brushed them off and revised them, and they really had to put them into action. Employees started learning new technology like Teams and Zoom. I know before the pandemic, I wasn't familiar with Teams at all, and Arizona was using a Google platform. Employees were quickly moved to work from home, and they were taking like desktops at the time because we didn't really think about like laptops and the mobility of our workforce. So laptops have now become more important than ever for quick mobility. And then how do you measure productivity? We talked a little bit about that and outcomes. Project-based work is definitely easier to measure. A lot of people were using Teams to track projects and the work that was getting done. But at the end of the day, it really does come down to trust and believing employees can be productive when they're not sitting in a cubicle or a workspace. It's important to have frequent check-ins when they're working from home and make sure people are okay and not feeling isolated. There are some states like Kansas that are working, living in another state, working and living in another state outside of the DOT. I believe it was Maribel that had moved to North Carolina but was working for Kansas DOT. And there are tax implications and a lot of things to think about if the DOTs start to move that direction. Workers' comp and insurance and employment laws in that state that they live and work in addition to the other states where the DOT is located. Recently, I was talking to a real estate agent in Idaho, and companies were telling employees that they could go live anywhere in the Northwest and get like California or Seattle wages. And so if that trend starts to continue and affect DOTs nationally like that, that's going to present some real challenges for us as we try to compete for talent. So yes, the widespread and sudden adoption of telecommuting is the most transformational change to occur as a result of COVID-19 outbreak. It will forever change the workforce, and we have pivoted to a new workplace called home. I'll now turn the time over to Joanna to talk about recruitment.
My name is Joanna McFadden, and I'm the EEO-DB officer for the Arkansas Department of Transportation. The final podcast, titled New Employee Experience, was held on October 2nd, 2020. I had the pleasure of serving as the moderator for this podcast. Our panelists included Cindy Bullock, Human Resources Director / Division Administrator for Virginia DOT, Mr. Vince Malone, Director of Civil Rights Division for the Tennessee DOT, and Tom Hicks, the Deputy Division Chief of Human Resources for Caltrans. We were able to have a very interesting conversation on the current and lasting impacts that COVID-19 has had on the new employee experience. Many of us still remember our very first day on our current jobs. I know for me personally, it was the smiling faces, warm handshakes, and office tours that made me feel welcome to this new world where I knew no one. In the past 10 months, face-to-face contact has almost been non-existent. So this is a liberty that unfortunately many of our 2020 new hires have not had. The goal of this podcast was to discuss what DOTs were doing to make sure that new employees were able to seamlessly become acclimated to their work environments. We wanted to know, how were new employees being welcomed to the organization as a whole? How were employees learning of the policies and procedures? And how were they being introduced to their new workspace and peers? A few of our most thought-provoking questions were, for new employees who are hired into positions that are currently working remote, do they immediately go into a working from home environment? Next, onboarding is as much about making a new hire feel comfortable in their new environment as it is about teaching them the nuances of the role they were hired for. What is your organization doing to make sure that these employees are being placed in a position to be successful in their job? This is just a glimpse into the great conversation that was had. Again, I would strongly suggest you taking the time to listen to each of these podcasts. There are what I call golden nuggets that can be taken away from each of them. If you need the link to the podcast, we will be happy to get those for you. Just let us know. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Karen and Brenda and Joanna in the talent management team. We're going to move now to the culture team report out, but before Deborah gets started, Penelope, can we show the PSA?
Baby boomers, often believed to be the biggest section of the working population, are fading away. The U.S. Census reports that there are currently around 78 million boomers, 25% of the population, and they're currently retiring at the rate of 10,000 per day. As this group, who have been at the forefront of business for the past 5 decades, starts to leave, it's time to think about the modern workplace and how to start reassessing labels that have stereotypically been placed on employees. As those who predominantly come from one era leave the workplace, these positions are being filled by a new generation.
I may be from a different era than you, but I'm hardworking, responsible, and devoted.
Capable, ready, and willing to do the work and get the job done. The culture is evolving. The workplace is evolving. The time is now. And the big question is, what part are you taking to embrace the evolution? Put the labels where they belong. Accept and accommodate differences in others, and let's all work together. A message from AASHTO and the Arkansas Department of Transportation.
Wonderful, thank you. So as you process that PSA, we are going to move back to our slideshow and let the culture team take it away. Deborah.
Hello. Good day to everyone. My name is Deborah Goss, and I'm the Contract Compliance Manager for the Office of Civil Rights at the Connecticut Department of Transportation. The Joint Task Force examined the impacts of digitalization of the workforce as it relates to the organizational structure. 2 mega trends surfaced as a result: a demand for more flexible service delivery, incorporating innovation, updating business objectives, and being responsive to the changes in workforce demands, and adjusting to the culture of the new workforce. Transportation agencies need to prepare for change. There are several actions that agencies can take, including develop, adopt, and use organizational change models. Change is not always easy, and the sell can be difficult. It is important to ensure that strategies have been put into place to ensure that agencies can and will have the ability to change in order to meet the needs of a changing workforce. Make diversity and inclusion a priority. Embracing inclusive diversity and inclusion and the value it provides to the organization. Promote and sustain a learning culture. embrace change, and welcome new ideas. Adopt and use informed decision-making throughout the organization, employing well thought out decision-making strategies to take into consideration your current as well as your future needs, and allowing employees to be a part of problem-solving activities. Improve collaborations. Encourage employees to reduce organizational silos and to cross-pollinate ideas. Develop, adopt, and use workforce risk assessment tools. Periodically, look to see if the current organizational structure is conducive to your agency's goals and identify where the risks are. Joanna will now share specific activities that can be used to address the identified megatrends. Joanna?
Thank you, Deborah. Hello again. A few moments ago, you were able to view the PSA. The beauty of this PSA was that it was able to capture how far DOTs have come with diversity. In order for DOTs to continue to be successful, it is very important for management to understand the value that everyone can bring. I am happy to say that this PSA came from the DOT in Arkansas, and I personally know each of these employees, their stories, and the value they add. I would now like to do a brief recap of each of the PSA participants and the stereotypes/labels that they have broken through. First, we have Terry. Physical ability. Terry wants us to know, if you can help me a little, I can help you a lot. The next label that we wanted to break down was sex. This is Sergeant Winfrey from our Highway Police Division. She wants us to know, I may be a female, but I can carry my own load. Ethnicity, from Edgar in our public involvement section. My language may be foreign to you, but I can help bridge gaps in communication and understanding. Next, we wanted to take two approaches as it related to age. The first person is Dennis, a 35-plus-year engineer. I was around before computers were in the workplace, but I evolved and I'm still here. The next perspective is from a millennial, Javon, in our mail and supply area. I may be from a different era than you, but I'm hardworking, responsible, and devoted. Religion. This is from Adnan, one of our Muslim engineers. My personal beliefs may be different than yours, but our goals, they are the same. And last, Brittany, who was one of our writers. My family may look different than yours, but I work just as hard to support them. I'll leave you with these lasting words from our PSA. The culture is evolving, the workplace is evolving. The time is now, and the big question is, what part are you taking to embrace the evolution? I will now turn the presentation back over to Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna and Deborah. Appreciate your presentations. A little bit more time on the culture team. We are going to ask you to answer a survey. It should show up on your webinar. Please send in your response, and then we'll report out on the survey results in just a few moments.
Looks like about 55% of attendees have voted. Let's just give it another 30 seconds. You should see the poll pop up here in your GoToWebinar screen. Just go ahead and click yes or no, and we will show the results.
Okay, let's show the results. Great. Thank you very much for that feedback. We will be asking you to provide some additional information after the presentation. So if you can share how you might use this PSA, that would be very helpful for us. Our goal here is to provide tools and information that you can take back to your DOTs and use them as is ready to go. So there's not a lot of extra work you have to do in order to start sharing the message that can really help with digitalization, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace. So we do have one question. Clarice, can you read the question for us, and we'll see which of our panelists wants to answer?
Sure, no problem. So the question that I've received is, how can I use this information in my DOT?
So data and information management, Lenny or Tarun, do you have an idea you can provide?
Hello again, Tarun. I'll start. I think I would encourage you to look at the survey results that we have and look at your own state's profile to see how you're doing and in supporting digitalization activities. I think it's important to really evaluate the current practice for digitalization in our organizations. And so that means looking a little bit outside of our transportation sector as well and seeing where you have opportunity to engage. I'd also encourage you to begin to engage your legislatures in the conversation, because a lot of this is it requires some capital to get moving, and it would be helpful to have them understand the issues that we're facing and to help us address them. Tarun, do you have anything else?
I think very nicely put, Lenny. I would only add that the more you can engage with your work areas, the business, to poll them, to show them what the other DOTs are doing, to show them the trends that we're seeing based on digitalization and its impacts, the more I think people will start to understand the importance of looking at data, looking at technology, not just as something peripheral, but really at the heart of the organization, much like finance and HR, right? So I think that's one thing that I try to do in my organization, constantly bring the business in to the discussions so that they really think about data and technology as part of our strategic plan for the business. So I would just add that one point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Talent management, Karen, Brenda, or Joanna?
Yeah, I guess I can start. I guess I would start. It was really, there's a lot of rich discussion in those webinars, so I'd really encourage you. It might not be of interest to all those, but even as hiring managers, even as you're being an advocate for your DOT, a recruiter, I mean, it's just a nice collection of best practices, and we got a lot of participation from the participants as well. So just best practices, where you can make some changes, where other agencies have done some pretty innovative things. So that would be my recommendation. I don't know if Joanna or Brenda.
Yeah, just to add, I would definitely engage with your organization in the discussions about what the future workforce will look like and how do we attract and retain talent as the world is going to work from home, and what does that look like? Or is it a hybrid model, or is it, full-time work from home? Or if at all you're going to do work from home, because the world has definitely changed with COVID-19. And so I would encourage you to actively engage in the discussions with your DOTs.
I was just going to add one thing. The unique thing about this whole COVID-19 situation is that it has affected all of us. And so there are things that can be taken from each of these podcasts. And one of the things that I think is most important to realize is that we really have to be open-minded in the way that we're going to be doing business for quite some time moving forward. So I definitely think that this can be used in any organization, regardless of size. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the culture team, Deborah and Joanna, how could this be, what do you would share from the Joint Task Force? How can we bring this back to the DOTs?
To me, the essence of any DOT organization is the beauty of diversity. There's so much value that can be added to your organization, different experience, different thoughts, and those are the things that really will allow us to be able to move forward and be successful. Even if someone wanted to take the PSA and plug in their own participants, that would be something really neat, because I know a lot of our employees here at the DOT in Arkansas have been really excited to hear the stories about their peers.
And the one thing that I would offer as well is, with regard to your workforce, looking at your job specifications to make sure that they meet your current needs. I think that's really important. Looking at your job classifications, looking at the experience and expertise that you might be looking for. That's very important, especially when you're looking at the dynamic change with regard to how we do business.
Thank you so much. We have time for one more question. Do we have another question, Clarice?
I sure do, Amanda. So the other question received was, how can I get involved in the JTF dig?
Great question. And luckily, it's very easy. All you need to do is contact one of us on the team, let us know you're interested. email works. You can respond to Penelope or Lloyd or Clarice and let them know that you'd be interested, and we will reach out to you and welcome anyone who'd like to help us get the DOTs ready for what can happen when we move to more automated processes, when we really start to look at the impact of digitalization on our structures, because it can be our technology infrastructure, it can be our organizational structure, and it is definitely how we impact individuals inside our workforce, how we can help them make the most out of the technology that is coming down the pipe.
Amanda, I actually did receive another question as well. Do we have time for that?
Sure.
State DOTs very much have a family culture that has been impacted by the digitization and the pandemic. Any thoughts on how to not lose this culture without being together in an office or maintenance yard like we used to, and having those water cooler chats?
That is a great question, and it's one that we are not alone in struggling to answer. And I'm going to open it up to the panelists. Any of the panelists want to chime in? If not, then I will tackle the question.
Hi, Amanda. I was pausing for the human resource folks to pop in, or culture folks first. I will say, at WashDOT, some of our staff have scheduled informal water cooler conversations, and just trying to create some of those social events online using engagement tools like polling and interactive whiteboards or Post-it notes, the Jamboards, sorts of things, to try to shift the way that we are doing our work that we used to do in person with each other. But those are just a couple things that are happening at WashDOT, and I would love to hear more from others.
Thank you, Lenny.
This is Brenda from Idaho, and just to add on to what Lenny was saying, that's what we did. We talked a lot about that, about, daily huddle boards and, using Teams or some other type of platform. So connecting more frequently. Our chief operations officer here in Idaho, he has a monthly Teams call with all of the foremen and, out in the field, so he can stay connected to all of those individuals that are working out in the field and not working from home. So and the executive team here has met daily as well since mid-March, since the pandemic. So I think those more frequent check-ins, daily check-ins, huddle boards, and those things are really important when you have, the people working from home to stay connected.
Thank you very much, Brenda. One of the things that we've been doing up here in Alaska is holding open office hours. So people will go on to, we use MS Teams here primarily. They'll go on to MS Teams and just post, for this hour, I'll be on Teams. And anybody who wants to can join in, and there's no agenda, there's no topic. It's just that opportunity to bring up whatever might be hot in the moment. And we're finding that people really enjoy that. Some people will come for the whole hour to learn. Some pop in, ask their question, and leave. And it has a little bit more of that kind of informal stopping by the office feel. So that's something that's been working for us. Other ideas or comments on the question? All right. Well, thank you very much for your questions. If you have more, please let us know. We would be happy to engage in more discussion about what the Joint Task Force is doing and how we can help you in the DOTs. We do want to acknowledge that the Joint Task Force has accomplished several of its objectives to date, and this roundtable was an opportunity for us to share those results. Please do visit the Joint Task Force website. You can access all of the resources that are available. The PSA you saw, the webinars that were referenced, the survey results that Data and Information Management shared. We also have some white papers, and we will be continuing to add to that resource page on the website. The task force will also be sending out a pulse survey within the next 24 hours to gather your insights into the value of the roundtable and some potential next steps. What would be helpful for you? Where would you like to see us go? What types of resources are you looking for, expecting, or hoping for from the Joint Task Force? Please share that with us. And thank you so much for attending today's presentation. As a reminder, this presentation has been recorded and it will be shared with you shortly. If you have any other questions that we didn't have a chance to cover today, please direct them to your AASHTO committee liaison or to me, Amanda Holland. On behalf of the Joint Task Force, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.